I believe she committed the murder, I told Smith, and proceeded to lay out what I thought had happened. In my hypothesis, an approaching 40th birthday, the busy holiday season, an exhausting Christmas day, and an argument with JonBenét had left Patsy frazzled. Her beautiful daughter, whom she frequently dressed almost as a twin, had rebelled against wearing the same outfit as her mother. When they came home, John Ramsey helped Burke put together a Christmas toy. JonBenét, who had not eaten much at the White's party, was hungry. Her mother let her have some pineapple, and then the kids were put to bed. John Ramsey read to his little girl. Then he went to bed. Patsy stayed up to prepare for the trip to Michigan the next morning, a trip she admittedly did not particularly want to make. Later, JonBenét awakened after wetting her bed, as indicated by the plastic sheets, the urine stains, the pull-up diaper package hanging halfway out of a cabinet, and the balled-up turtleneck found in the bathroom. I concluded that the little girl had worn the red turtleneck to bed, as her mother originally said, and that it was stripped off when it got wet. As I told Smith, I never believed that the child was sexually abused for the gratification of the offender, but the vaginal trauma was some sort of corporal punishment. The dark fibers found in her pubic region could have come from the violent wiping of a wet child. Patsy probably yanked out the diaper package in cleaning up JonBenét. Patsy would not be the first mother to lose control in such a situation. One of the doctors we consulted cited toileting issues as a textbook example of causing a parental rage. So in my hypothesis, there was some sort of explosive encounter in the child's bathroom sometime prior to 1 o'clock in the morning, the time suggested by the digestion rate of the pineapple found in the child's stomach. I believe JonBenét was slammed against a hard surface, such as the edge of a tub, inflicting a mortal head wound. She was unconscious, but her heart was still beating. Patsy would not have known that JonBenét was still alive because the child already appeared to be dead. The massive head trauma would have eventually killed her. It was the critical moment in which she had to either call for help or find an alternative explanation for her daughter's death. It was accidental in the sense that the situation had developed without motive or premeditation. She could have called for help but chose not to. An emergency room doctor probably would have questioned the accident and called the police. Still, little would have happened to Patsy in Boulder, but I believe panic overtook her. John and Burke continued to sleep while Patsy moved the body of JonBenét down to the basement and hid her in the little room. As I pictured the scene, her dilemma was that the police would assume the obvious if a 6-year-old child was found dead in a private home without any satisfactory explanation. Patsy needed a diversion and planned the way she thought a kidnapping should look. She returned upstairs to the kitchen and grabbed her tablet and felt-tip pen, flipping to the middle of the tablet, and started a ransom note, drafting one that ended on page 25. For some reason, she discarded that one and ripped pages 17 through 25 from the tablet. Police never found those pages. On page 26, she began the, quote, Mr. and Mrs. I, close quote, then abandoned that false start. At some point, she drafted the long ransom note. By doing so, she created the government's best piece of evidence. She then faced the major problem of what to do with the body. Leaving the house carried the risk of John or Burke awakening at the sounds and possibly being seen by a passerby or a neighbor. Leaving the body in the distant, almost inaccessible basement room was the best option. As I envisioned it, Patsy returned to the basement, a woman caught up in panic, where she could have seen, perhaps by detecting a faint heartbeat or a sound or a slight movement, that although completely unconscious, JonBenét was not dead. Others might argue that Patsy did not know the child was still alive. In my hypothesis, she took the next step, looking for the closest available items in desperation. Only feet away was her paint tote. She grabbed a paintbrush and broke it to fashion the garrote with some cord. Then she looped the cord around the girl's neck. In my scenario, she choked JonBenét from behind with a grip on her broken paintbrush handle, pulling the ligature. JonBenét, still unconscious, would never have felt it. There are only 4 ways to die: suicide, natural, accidental, or homicide. This accident, in my opinion, had just become a murder. Then the staging continued to make it look like a kidnapping. Patsy tied the girl's wrists in front, not in the back, for otherwise the arms would not have been in the overhead position. But with a 15-inch length of cord between the wrists and the knot tied loosely over the clothing, there was no way such a binding would have restrained a live child. It was a symbolic act to make it appear that the child had been bound. Patsy took considerable time with her daughter, wrapping her carefully in the blanket and leaving her with a favorite pink nightgown. As the FBI had told us, a stranger would not have taken such care. So I told Lou I thought that throughout the coming hours, Patsy worked on her staging, such as placing the ransom note where she would be sure to find it the next morning. She placed the tablet on the countertop right beside the stairs and put the pen in the cup. While going through the drawers and under the countertop, where the tablet had been, she found rolls of tape. She placed a strip from a roll of duct tape across JonBenét's mouth. There was bloody mucus under the tape and a perfect set of the child's lip prints, which did not indicate a tongue impression or resistance. I theorized that Patsy, trying to cover her tracks, took the remaining cord tape and the first ransom note out of the house that night, perhaps dropping them in a nearby storm sewer or among the Christmas debris and wrappings in a neighbor's trash can. She was running out of time. The household was scheduled to wake up early to fly to Michigan, and in her haste, Patsy Ramsey did not change clothes, a vital mistake. With the clock ticking and hearing her husband moving around upstairs, she stepped over the edge. The way I envisioned it, Patsy screamed, and John Ramsey, coming out of the shower, responded, totally unaware of what had occurred. Burke, awakened by the noise shortly before 6 o'clock in the morning, came down to find out what had happened and was sent back to bed as his mother talked to the 911 emergency dispatcher. Patsy Ramsey opened the door to Officer Rick French about 5:55 a.m. on the morning of December 26, 1996, wearing a red turtleneck sweater and black pants, the same thing she had worn to a party the night before. Her hair was done, her makeup was on. In my opinion, she had never been to bed. The diversion worked for 7 hours as the Boulder police thought they were dealing with a kidnapping. John Ramsey, in my hypothetical scenario, probably first grew suspicious while reading the ransom note that morning, which was why he was unusually quiet. He must have seen his wife's writing mannerisms all over it, everything but her signature. But where was his daughter? He said in his police interview that he went down to the basement when Detective Arndt noticed him missing. I suggested that Ramsey found JonBenét at that time and was faced with the dilemma of his life. During the next few hours, his behavior changed markedly as he desperately considered his few options: submit to the authorities or try to control the situation. He had already lost one child, Beth, and now JonBenét was gone too. Now Patsy was possibly in jeopardy. The stress increased steadily during the morning, for Patsy, in my theory, knew that no kidnapper was going to call by 10 o'clock, and after John found the body, he knew that too. So when Detective Linda Arndt told him to search the house, he used the opportunity and made a beeline for the basement. Then, tormented as he might be, he chose to protect his wife. Within a few hours, the first of his many lawyers was in motion, the private investigators a day later. That's the way I see it, I said to Lou Smith. That's how the evidence fits to me. She made mistakes, and that's how we solve crimes, right? I reminded him of his own favorite saying, murders are usually what they seem.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thomas.